Hi, welcome to Sportsy, Let's Talk Sports. We have spoken about multiple sports and we have spoken about multiple fields in the sports like athlete or brand management or CSR. Today we are going to talk to Sam Lee, who is a head of international business and strategy for Sina Sports. Sina Sports is one of the big giants in sports commercialization, sports digital properties, as well as content in China. Uh, Sam is heading their property business, which is one of the biggest property that they have is FIBA 3x3. Uh, Sam will be talking to us about what are the sports properties and why do we need to develop those properties and what are the benefits that we get by those properties. At the same time, we'll talk about some startup consulting as well as the trends in new sports technology. So please welcome Sam Lee from Sina Sports. Thank you for watching. Thank you for liking and thank you for sharing. But please do subscribe on our channel Sportsy Says and follow our handle Sportsy Says across all social media platforms. Please help us spread the word about Sportsy. Let's talk sports. Do subscribe on Sportsy Says. Hi Sam. Welcome on Sportsy. Let's talk sports.
Hi Sid. Happy to be here.
Yes, and I know you are in New Zealand, which is a cold weather, but also the background of Golden Gate also makes it look pretty cool. So it's a nostalgic moment for me as well, looking at the Golden Gate. So Sam, you have a great career, education-wise. You're a computer science grad, then Michigan law, and after that, postgraduate again, MBA in Stanford. Worked with various places along with NBA on the whole legal side of that. And from there to moving to something like Sina and looking at creating properties and growing the international business. So if you can just tell us about the journey of a computer science grad to where you are, it will be really great for the listeners.
Sure. It's a very interesting career that I've kind of luckily landed into, and I'm very grateful for it. I've always wanted to do sports or entertainment, and having grown up in the States, I looked at the kind of the senior executives in those industries, and there seemed to be a path from the legal side. So a lot of attorneys eventually become business leaders in those industries, more so than I think some of the other industries. So I said, that's something that I would like to pursue. So I attended law school, and afterwards was really trying to look for ways to break into it. And then I realized how small those two industries are. Really not large industries and quite difficult to break into, I would say. So I just continued along with my corporate lawyer career. I was with a New York firm. I was doing corporate capital markets, M&A work. And then it just happened that I knew the partner who was the general counsel at NBA in China. And so that was kind of the big break for me to go into the sports industry. I grew up in the Bay Area, and my team is the Golden State Warriors. So all throughout my youth, and in the States, you follow a lot of teams that are from the same region that you grew up in. So I was never a big NBA fan because the Warriors were terrible, and our season were always very short.
I remember that.
So it's so when NBA came calling, I'm like, well, I don't know if I really like basketball. But obviously, I didn't know much about them. I mean, NBA, in terms of any league, I would say around the world, is the most global, internationally, is recognized, and also it's probably the most forward-looking in terms of technology. And so, my 3 years there, I learned a lot. I started off in the legal department and doing a lot of broadcasting deals, sponsorship deals, licensing deals. And the way that they train attorneys there is very good for the attorneys because it allows you to be on the front line. Like, we're not in a cubicle somewhere. I mean, you're really out there with the business team and observing them, seeing how they operate and learning from them, but obviously performing that legal role just alongside the business guy. So that was very, very educational and a great experience. And then yes, and then Sina came calling. So Sina is a Chinese digital media platform that's been around for over 20 years now. We're listed on the Nasdaq for the last 20 years. So very a very kind of .com dinosaur almost. But we've obviously have reinvented ourselves multiple times in order to stay competitive. I was talking to the chairman and the COO there through our partnership with the NBA, and they asked me to join them in the sports department. And it's been a great ride. I've been there for over 5 years now. My role has very much shifted and molded by both the situation externally in China as sport kind of went through a big growth spurt, and then also in terms of within the company and what it meant to have this sports company that belongs to both a Sina side and also the Weibo side. Weibo is the biggest open social media platform in China.
Right.
And also personally, having kind of looked into the situation as Sina and observing and finding kind of the right niche for myself. So one of my biggest trepidations about going there was the fact that it's a Chinese company and I've never worked in a Chinese company. And so my title now is Head of International, which means that it's more external facing. I am much more involved in the international community, in the industry, and trying to create partnerships in one of the 3 business lines that we now have. And that's really kind of my I guess I found my niche and my bread and butter is really kind of communicating and being that bridge between the international community and what we're doing in Sina. So that's kind of my career in a nutshell. And then I guess one thing is on the sports tech side, I've started a few years ago a passion project, I guess, in terms of advising companies, startups in the sports tech space, and also being a mentor and participating in the ecosystem. So I'm a mentor for Stadia Ventures and Hype Innovation and a few other ones.
Excellent. I think it's a great journey that people feel that, okay, I need to have an exact education to be part of some career. I think it is not. It's about the passion and the direction that you want to take it, from computer science to heading international business for a sporting giant of China. So I think it's a great journey.
Well, the legal career and the legal experience helps in this industry and the entertainment industry. I mean, it's not a fluke that there's a lot of attorneys in these industries. The reason being that really at the core of these industries, especially for the content, the rights holders and the content creators, are these intellectual properties, right? I mean, we've always said that, hey, look, we don't produce a product and we don't really produce a service, right? We're really selling intellectual property. And so for people with legal background who understand how to, in the best way, to transform those properties into revenue, there's really a place for that, and that's the reason why you see a lot of attorneys in these areas.
Excellent. I think this also gives a good career advice for people to not to ignore the legal side of business and understanding and giving importance to legal side as well, the law as a career, which can get them to sports, and sports law is picking up pretty well in India and South Asia as well nowadays.
Correct. Yes. So there's a lot of folks who do that, where they are certain law firms in the States that very much concentrate on sports law, and really sports law is a bit of a misnomer because you're really dealing with law in each of the different areas. It's just that they're relating to sports. A contract is a contract. It just happens that you're dealing with a sponsorship contract in sports versus a regular contract.
Right. And so great. So coming to your the stint with Sina, which is 5+ years, and you had the international business. So what I know talking to you is you're responsible for creation of the properties and also expansion of those properties. What are these properties created for, and how do you plan to grow it internationally, or how are you doing it already internationally?
Right. Right. So we have three lines of business. I alluded to two of them. One is our sports website, where we do a lot of broadcasting of events from around the world. We also have a huge editorial team. So you can think of us as Yahoo Sport or ESPN, that type of a digital media platform. We also, so Sina incubated Weibo, which is a big open social media platform in China. Is one of the top three platforms. We have about 500 million monthly active users. So within that platform, our sports vertical serves as the platform itself, but we are also the largest content creator on the platform. So not only do we so then you wear kind of two hats. One is that our guys who write for our digital media platform also writes for the Weibo platform. So we operate quite a few of the largest sports-related accounts. So we're able to generate a very large viewership, not only on our website, but also on the social media platform. And then secondly, as the platform itself, we are in the business of getting any relevant account holders accounts to open up. So that could be from rights holders to teams, leagues, individuals, athletes, influencers, brands, media, other media, all across the spectrum for anyone who should have an account to open that account, for them to be involved in what we're doing, for them to create interesting content in order to increase the interaction rate of the platform. And there, it's been very interesting to work on some of the bigger athlete openings. So Neymar, for example, that we did, and now we pretty much have everyone on the platform. And then, so 5 years ago when I joined, a few of us looked at what we had and what we didn't have. What we had were two large platforms. One media platform, which is very much concentrated on sports fans, and we had the social media platform that had a much larger platform base, but maybe not so much hardcore sports fans, right? A lot of casual sports fans, but we do encompass the entire fandom in China, but one thing we did lack was a way to directly extract revenue from them. So a direct B2C model was not really existing, and the reason for that is unlike the Western world, the paid subscription model for media rights doesn't really exist. It's something that has been cultivated over the last few years by other platforms, but back then, it didn't really exist. So we could not actually charge fans for the content. One reason being that there's not enough of a fan base to do some of that stuff. And then secondly, partially probably due to the fault of Sina, over the last 20 years, we've been giving fans the content for free. And I know that in India, you have this issue as well, where it's hard to get people to pay for something after you've given them for free for so long. And so we basically relied on the B2C model. So 100% revenue coming from advertising. And we said, well, but we did have this very large fan base. What can we do with that fan base? And that's where we started creating our own offline events. We looked at the model of ESPN creating X Games 30 years ago, and really owning your own right, as opposed to buying the rights periodically from other rights holders. And we said, hey, look, well, and that's the strategy that was developed, was that the model being, because we have such a large fan base, I can drive all of the fans, all of the eyeballs into not anything, but into a property that we create, and generate more than that property will generate organically. Multiples of what that property will generate organically. So now we have as our flagship product the world's largest 3-on-3 basketball tournament. It's a FIBA endorsed tournament that last year we ran in 185 cities in China. And over 200,000 participants on the amateur level. So it's a massive tournament. This year with the virus, we're postponing it until July. And so it'll be in probably at least over 100 cities, but not going to be 185 like last year, because the the period will be shorter in terms of the playing time. And we also have a futsal tournament in over 50 cities. And we also have an alpine skiing contest in over 100 ski resorts across China.
Wow.
And for all of them, I mean, we're duplicating the model where we are able to leverage our large viewership in order to generate very high traffic, which in turn really attracts a lot of sponsors. So for example, our round 3 basketball tournament, we've accumulated over 10 billion hashtag views, over 3 billion video views for an amateur tournament, right? And we've done very, very well in terms of the sponsorship as well. In the past, we've had McDonald's, Lenovo, Samsung, quite a few international brands, and also a whole host of Chinese brands as well. So that's kind of the model that we've created, is to leverage our online presence in order to create these offline events and drive traffic to them. It's a pretty unique model, like I mentioned, and it's really found success. I would say that without that model, because we always ask this question internally: are we an event operator or are we a media platform? And the answer is always that we're a media platform first and foremost, because without the media platform, there is really no event for us to give exposure to, because there are so many event operators, but no one has the type of exposure that we do, which makes it very, very difficult to amplify the event and to make it into a valuable brand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's an interesting way to look at the problem, which you had user base, we had content consumers, but not getting revenue from that, and then creating the properties which will be absorbed by these and amplify the user base. I think it's a great problem which is solved differently and replicated. I think it's a great job done. So
and we're still not directly monetizing the users, right? We're still using the users as a indirect way in order to access revenue from sponsors that otherwise wouldn't come to us, because a lot of times the sponsors for our tournaments are also advertisers on the platform, right? McDonald's, for example, I mean, of course they're going to buy online ad, but what we're introducing to them is an additional an additional project or additional method in order to reach their fans, right? Because if all we can offer to them is online ads, they're only going to spend so much of their budget, or they're only going to spend the online media budget with us. They're not going to spend the offline events or campaign budget with us. So we're just giving them another reason to spend more money on the platform.
Right. So, as the Sina Golden League or Sina Elite League has grown significantly, and it's a 3x3, which is FIBA approved and everything. But what has 3x3 done to if you can give a light, what has it done to the basketball, and how the more people got involved and grew the ecosystem? If you can, because you have an NBA background and now 3x3, so I think it will be good. One of those very few guys who can actually it's not comparing, but actually talking about how they complement each other and grow the game of basketball.
Yeah, I mean, I think we got lucky a little bit at the beginning. I mean, one of the considerations for doing 3-on-3 is because when we look at Weibo, when we look at our user base, the vast majority on Weibo, I think now is 92% of the users are coming from mobile devices. And so one of the considerations when we looked at potential events to get into is the fact that which events have tighter, camera angles, which events are fast and have shorter period of viewing, everything that's mobile centric and mobile focused. And what we said was 3-on-3 basketball, 5-on-5 futsal, because these are shorter versions of the game, tighter angle, half court, 20-minute, 10-minute game clock, 20-minute game playing clock. And that's something that can be very much consumed easily in chunks on the mobile device. So that was one thing that we were thinking about. But obviously, FIBA has really driven the 3-on-3 game internationally, and they've done a tremendous job. And so a couple of years after we started, it became part of the Olympics. And so it was almost like overnight, all of a sudden, we're sitting in a nice spot where we have an event that has garnered and will garner a lot of interest going forward. And as I started getting more involved with it and watching it, I realized that, hey, it is a different game than the 5-on-5 game. right?
Yeah.
It's much faster. It's much more physical. It's it's also because the shorter amount of playing time is more exciting in certain ways. I kind of compare the NBA games to a 2-hour movie, right? I mean, you could have good movies and bad movies, and you're sitting there and it's one plot and it's 2 hours.
Yeah.
The 3-on-3 game is much more like a TV show, right? 20 minutes. You have a whole. If you didn't like it, if you didn't like those 20 minutes, well, I have one coming up. That's a whole different set of characters, a whole different plot, another buzzer beater potentially. So it's more geared towards, I think, a younger audience, a mobile friendly audience, and so in terms of kind of opening that up to a different group of viewers who might be a little bit younger, and everybody plays basketball on the 3-on-3 side. Everyone is not that often that growing up you're playing 5-on-5 full court. So you're playing a lot of times you're playing half court, and then so fans can very easily appreciate the athleticism and the expertise that these players bring, right? I mean, there's some of the best players in the world, like for example our Elite League, which is that international competition. Last year we had, I think, quite a few of the top 10 or top 20 players, and I think we had like 4 or 5 of the top 20 teams from around the world coming to China to play in our tournament. And the team that won, Harlem from New York, from US, one of the teams, the best player on that team, and he's actually FIBA's regular season MVP last year, was selected shortly after our tournament to be on Team USA, to represent Team USA in the qualifying tournament that will happen soon. And then we'll, hopefully, if they make it, then they'll be Olympian in next year's Olympics. So these are very high-level players, but because it's right now it's still a growing sport, we're able to get them to come and play in our tournament, and just watching that level of play, I can see that how it could be very, very attractive. And one of our missions, our duty, is to continue to help exemplify that game and give exposure to that game in China and also internationally.
Excellent. Even India had a 3x3 tournament last year, and it was a pretty good success.
Yeah, we know those guys.
Yeah. So Rohit, right? Rohit is.
Yes.
Yeah. So I had a chance to work with him on a couple of things on the sponsorship and getting the team owners and all those things. So it was fun. So that was my first exposure to 3x3, and I really loved it. The way promotions happens inside the big malls and all, I think it was a pretty fun thing for people to see it as well. It doesn't need to have a big arena. It actually worked in a mall so well.
Yes. So out of our 185 stops last year, the majority were in malls. So we actually have good relationship and sponsorship deals with several big mall developers and real estate developers in China. And then basically anywhere that you have high foot traffic, and that tends to be malls. And also due to the weather, a lot of times we're playing either indoors or outside of the mall. We also play quite a bit in universities. Again, it's high traffic areas where we go in, and also a lot of the players and the teams are come from the universities as well. So very much grassroots level gameplay. But then because we have so many players, eventually as they get to the finals in China and also the international competition, then it's no longer amateurs. We can't go play in that tournament anymore. But we like the fact that we're building it from ground up. And to answer your question a little bit earlier about what have we contributed. I mean, we see out stories all the time. I mean, you're running 185 events around China. There's got to be stories. And we have one guy who came in, and he had one leg, and then we had, because we will invite the fans to do different contests, and he came in and he made, I think, like 6 or 7 3-pointers in a row, and we kind of made that a big story out of that because we are the media, so we're able to do that. And that video was seen quite a few times. And then the Chinese Paralympics team immediately called us and said, "Hey, we want to meet this guy." So there are a lot of stories like that which are really, really cool. And we have another team that came out of this mountainous region between Tibet and Sichuan, so the province next to Tibet. And these guys are young 20-year-old kids who never really left that mountainous region, and we hosted a satellite company or a satellite tournament there, and they played in it and they won. And so we brought them to Chengdu for the Sichuan province finale, and they beat the team that won it the year before. So then they got invited to Beijing, and they've never been to Beijing. And then we thought it was such a great story that we actually flew them to Manila because we had a stop in the Philippines, and we actually invited them to go out there and to represent, not, it goes beyond basketball at that point, to really represent China and the culture that they represent, in Tibet and in Sichuan. So, so lots of interesting stories here and there. I mean, we always have like people like we had a woman who came in a pair of jeans and then she hit like 10 3-pointers in a row. And, a lot of random stories like that. So it's we do feel like that is contributing to the community a little bit.
Yeah, and I think being a media backbone actually helps creating these stories better, and that the crux of the market, that what they want to see, what they want to hear. I think that also helps a lot. So it is a good thing to know that, okay, the event company back is a media together actually comes out with the good stories. Yeah. So so Sam, this all the things you're talking about and doing, I think there is a baseline or something called sports consulting here. So which is also one of the things that you like because of the whole background. So what is sports consulting, and what are the objectives of typical sports consulting here, and how does it work in the upcoming market vis-a-vis a mature market? I know this could be a 3-hour session, but if you can.
Yeah, I mean, so I serve as an advisor, so it's more of an advisory than a consulting. I mean, I don't work with any big companies because obviously there might be conflicts with what I'm doing at Sina. So this is much more, and it started off as just working and with people in industry or friends who are looking for a little bit of a help. So a lot of the startups, they have advisory boards where you have folks in the industries or areas that they need more expertise in, and the advisors will help them by finding potential networking situations, or finding potential deals, or giving advice on strategy. And from an advisor perspective, the benefit is really in kind of touching the newest technology and looking at the newest trends, which obviously benefits the company, the Sina, that I'm working with, because I get to see a lot of the interesting ideas and the technologies that are coming out of these startups. And so I just love being kind of around them and the entrepreneurial spirit that a lot of these young guys have.
So when you are consulting with these companies, the sports tech startups and all those things, consulting means advising. So what is the difference when you advise them? What is the difference when the company is looking after mature market or the company is looking after the upcoming market? How do you look at that side?
Yeah, I think ultimately there's not that much difference, I would say. I mean, I think for any startup, you really need to identify the market that you're going after, and then you need to adopt to that market. So whether it's a mature market versus a kind of an upstart market, you just have to make sure that that's the right one to be in. Because a lot of times, really, what it comes down to is whether the market is big enough to generate sufficient revenue, right? So if you are in an upstart market, but there are a lot of successes, right? In India, Dream 11 is the one that we always hear about. That it somehow, in a market where you feel like maybe there's not that much revenue, they're able to do it. So it's really not necessarily about the market, but it's really about how you can tap into it and really gain market share in those markets.
Excellent. So, and with your as a mentorship advisory board with Hype or Startup Bootcamp and other network, what are the trends that you're seeing in sports tech currently?
Yeah, in terms of verticals that are very hot, I guess. So I think esports is definitely one, and it's I think it's definitely a trend here to stay, accelerated by the coronavirus situation. Now we're seeing some really good numbers in terms of viewership, and I don't think that that's just going to go away. It's really an area that is building its own entire ecosystem. So if you're looking at the traditional sports and the ecosystem that exists there, you're basically starting with a blank canvas and trying to recreate the entire system. And that means that there's many areas within that ecosystem where companies can try to get market share. So that's why you do have a lot of companies going into it, but I do think that the potential there is big enough, for there to be sufficient winners from that particular market. Betting and fantasy sports is another one we mentioned. Dream 11 in the States, the legalization of betting will only proliferate. You have now almost half, close to half of company or of states are allowing betting. And we see DraftKings, IPOing a couple weeks ago and doing very well. So I think there's, again, it's a big market that's growing. And then, and my personal favorite is health and fitness. I think, and one that in China, just as in many developing markets, actually, this is one where for the developing markets, as the middle class continues to grow in China and India, and also in a lot of Southeast Asian countries, there will be a big focus for people on their personal well-being, and that means nutritional, mental, and physical health. And in each of those, we have a lot of examples of, from meditation apps to Peloton, to equipment makers to nutritional, companies, all trying to really capture that market. And that's, again, a very high explosive growth market, especially, I think, in the developing countries.
Excellent. And one last question that I have is how do you think the sports tech is actually impacting the way we experience sports? Say from a sport to a fan to an athlete. So how has it changed?
In every way, in so many ways, right? I mean, I think technology changes people's lives. If you look back 50 years ago, everyone's watching the game on radio, or listening to the game on the radio, or watching the game on TV, and that's to the extent of it. Pretty much all you're doing with technology, right? And then you kind of have the newspapers and the water cooler talks the day after, and that's it. But now, I mean, you are bombarded with technology in the journey of a fan. And every minute, I mean, there's alerts and this and that, and there's more interaction, there's more participation from the fans in the entire viewership area. Athletes, same thing. I mean, the amount of performance and that's always going to advance, right? Every from the simple things like a tennis racket, right? If you look back 50 years, you have wooden rackets to a very advanced sabermetrics and performance data that you're seeing now, and that's only going to, because everyone, if you're in any sort of competition, you're always looking for an edge, and technology can provide that edge to you. So it changes almost any aspect of everyone in the sports industry, right? And health and fitness as well. Being able to track your own heartbeat, being able to train better, even if you're just a weekend warrior, really has changed people's lives.
Excellent, Sam. And because of your title, it pushes me to ask you one more question. You're head the international business. What does it mean to be? What is internationalization of sport means to you?
I think it means to really transcend language and culture, and that's what we are trying to do with our own offline events. If you look at all of the bigger events from around the world, it's not really about a particular language or a particular place, but it's really about how that experience can affect people from all different places. And that's what we're trying to do.
Excellent, Sam. Really appreciate your time. I think it was wonderful for people to understand, firstly, what Sina does, what your role is, and how you can grow in your career with having the right intention and right goal. And also the inputs about the fan engagement or the technology and all those things. I think it was a wonderful chat. I think I can go on for a longer time, but I don't want, this is the Friday evening for you. I don't want to take it anymore, but it will be great to chat with you again on some other topics and share the knowledge where on this platform Sportsy, where we talk about sports.
Absolutely. A pleasure, Sid. Thanks so much.
Yes. Thank you, and really have a nice day and take care.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you for watching. Thank you for liking, and thank you for sharing. But please do subscribe on our channel Sportsy Says and follow our handle Sportsy Says across all social media platforms. Please help us spread the word about Sportsy. Let's talk sports. Do subscribe on Sportsy Says.